One of my favorite hymns has the line, "New occasions teach new duties." And in the month since I was with you last, who could have imagined the new duties that would be coming upon our way as new occasions unfold? My thanks, first of all, to David for his wonderful support and help in putting together this service, and to Kaylin and to Lynn and to Amy and to Rachel for their participation in this service. When I reflected last month about what to say to you in my next visit, I had some pretty clear ideas, and then life happened. The joke has it that we plan, God laughs. While it's not true that no one ever expected it could happen, I'll bet you and I never expected in our lives to face the kind of problems that COVID-19 is creating for us now. I felt totally unprepared. I have sort of said, how come I didn't get that briefing that would have told me to sell all my stock back in January? Oh, well, unprepared, that's how it feels. And then I find myself wondering, well, what if the economy doesn't turn around? What if people don't heal? What if it just gets worse and worse? And I listen to the news and read the paper, and everything tells me lots of stuff, but I don't know who or what to believe. I wonder if that is true for you. Over the years, I've comforted myself with this little affirmation. When you come to the edge of all that you know and you step into the unknown, you must believe one of two things. Either there will be ground, something solid to stand upon, or you will learn to fly. Well, I'm not so comforted by that affirmation right now. It seems a little, it's asking me for more hope than I have. Rather, I feel like I'm hanging on the edge of a precipice, not knowing when those cords might break and I might fall into the chasm of the unknown. And I'm wondering, how is this for you, and how is it shaping your life and your relationships to others, your expectations? I discovered some days ago that I wake up in the morning in my usual, just before getting out of bed, musing over what I have in store for the day ahead and what plans I might be making. And then it's like a ghost enters the room. And I'm just startled into the awareness that my old normal is no longer normal. And I don't know what the new normal is. And part of me just wants to hold the covers up and go back to my dream world where things are a bit more secure. And yet then again, I feel like I need to be doing something to help our world. As E.B. White once said, it really makes it hard to plan a day. So what's next? What are we facing as we enter into this third month or so of dealing with the worldwide health catastrophe? What comes next? Is that a sunrise or a sunset? I ask myself. So, thinking about our time together and what I might have to say to you, I said, well, let's just go back to basic theology. We don't often have these kind of conversations as bluntly as this, but this is what theology is all about. What is our place in the scheme of the whole things? And my complaint with most people's answers is their concept of the grandness of being is way too small, picayune, trite, and trivial when you think of the immensity of the cosmos and its age of 13.4 billion years, and that the light we see at night came to us last night, but it started our way thousands, if not millions of years ago. When we look at the sky, we're looking at the past. What is our place in the scheme of everything? What is our reason for being? Or as I said, what is my reason for getting up in the morning? To save the world, to savor it. Theology always wants us to know in what we can place our deepest, most heartfelt trust. On whom, on what can we rely? And attempts to give answers. We know some of those answers. Sometimes there are a whole listing of statements. If people simply say them, then the world will be all right. In our tradition, we tend to say, well, we think the questions, asking better questions is probably far more important than coming up with answers that somehow allay our anxieties. And then the last question of theology is, to what end? What is our sense of tomorrow? I have two sons in their 40s now. They've had no children, and I grieve not becoming a grandfather. Probably never will. And then I ask myself, if I were in their shoes, would I bring a baby into the world now? I don't know the answer. I really don't. Although I hear in the back of my mind Carl Sandburg saying, member of our Universalist Church in Galesburg, Illinois, a newborn baby is God's reminder that God has not yet given up on the world. But what is your sense of tomorrow? Is it bright? Is it dark? I don't know. I'm not sure for myself yet how to think about that. But mostly I'm concerned about what I can do and think about the questions. What are our obligations to one another? I watched that video of the people in Assisi singing out their windows to one another in the otherwise empty town square. And I was touched with a sense of communion and community, a sense that we still belong to each other and need to be reminded. It really matters what you believe, but I'm a behaviorist and I listen less to what you say you believe and I pay attention more to what you do. And ours is a faith of embodiment, of incarnation. We have to put into our lives our deepest convictions. Now, over the years, I found myself saying that the argument between the Unitarians and the Christian Trinitarians is really a silly one, and one that still matters for people as to where they might want to go to worship. But it's not all that interesting a question to ask how many parts God is cut up into. And as I mulled on that more and more, I remembered what was the one thing, the only thing that Jesus said to his followers to pay attention to. At their last dinner together, he said, I offer you a new commandment. Love one another. Period. But there were no ifs, ands, buts, subjunctive clauses, semicolons, variances, excuses for not loving one another. That was the new command, to love one another. And so the universalist side of our faith is more important to me these days. I was explaining universalism to our kids one Sunday morning some years ago, and as I paused for a moment, one of the kids raised his hand very eagerly and said, does that mean God doesn't create junk? And I said, it's the best definition of universalism I could think of. God loves us all. We are all lovable and worthy of being loved and worthy of expressing love. But for many, ours is a heresy. The prevailing theology of our time is to divide the world into the saved and the damned, my side, your side, those people, our people. Universalism doesn't say it that way. We are all part of a great clubhouse of souls, and everyone's welcome and everyone gets in. And whatever turns out in the long end, it's because we're all in this together. So I remind us what we teach in this congregation. In our opening words this morning, we said love is the spirit of this church. And I like it that way, but I like it better when it says love is the teaching of our church, because you can't command people to love. You can only show them and guide them and encourage them to remember that love is always love, and that's what we are called to be. Love calls us, love calls us, love still calls us. Perhaps you have seen this image, the so-called pyramid of hierarchy of human need. The religious life is always trying to focus on that very top part of the triangle. How can we become the most human we can ever be, the best selves we can ever be? What does that require? How do we prepare for that? How do we know we're being that way? But further down on that pyramid, we see before love, we need to feel safe. And before we feel safe, we need to have our basic needs met. It's still a paradox to me why toilet paper has become sort of a meme of our time, that everybody had to run out and buy a huge supply. And now you can't find any in the stores, no matter how much you might need it. But being safe, I'm so struck at my own language when I do have to encounter folks on the streets, and I say farewell to them by saying, stay well, be safe. So our safety needs are really important, and that's why we're not in the same room right now. It's because we're manifesting, we're demonstrating that you can love one another and still create that physical distance of safety. David, what happened to the screen? I've suddenly back to you.
We can see the screen and we can see you. You can only see us, not to worry.
Yep. Well, my problem is I can't advance my slides. Let me try the program again. No, I'm back on your screen rather than mine. Hold on, folks. We knew there'd be technological challenges.
David, are you sharing your screen or is that Reverend Kenn's? You're on mute.
We were doing so good.
The share screen at your bottom so you can see your slides.
Hold on. I says I'm disabled.
You sense you're disabled.
Yeah,
You're back on the spotlight.
Host has disabled attendings from screen sharing, so it won't let me share. Hold on, folks.
You can share now. I just made you the host.
All right.
Yay!
Yay, there we go. Thank you, David. Okay, so stay well, be safe. And so I started asking myself why I'm saying that. And some of it is comfort, acknowledgement of our relationships with one another. They're still vibrant and important to us. And there's some real fear that we might not be able to keep them. I stopped at a farmer's market yesterday where a friend of mine has a stand, and we stood 15 feet apart and gave a great big air hug. And I really felt a sense of loss not being able to physically embrace. That's what is one of our obligations right now, is to refrain from meeting that oh so human need so that we might stay safe and stay well. If I were to redraw the screen that you see image that you see right now, I'd take that left-hand turn, I'd make it a whole lot wider, and I would narrow the right-hand turn. I think right now it is much easier and more and certainly understandable that fear is everywhere and we're scared, and it's okay to be scared. We need to acknowledge that. But as a people of faith, we are called to be ever hopeful. Love is calling us to put aside fear and preach hope. However, as Jonathan Swift once recognized, we don't always have enough in us to love one another. And when our safety needs are at risk, we go to the way to the bottom of that pyramid of need, and we start seeing one another as objects to fear. Fear and hate go together. There's plenty of that in our daily lives to be aware of, and how much more painful it is now when we listen to people talk with disdain. I was appalled at that preacher in Tampa last week who called his congregation to come together in spite of all the advice we've been receiving, and then said, go ahead and shake hands and show God that you're not afraid. You know, how many of them are going to come sick? I was angry and disappointed and sad for the 70 college kids in Austin who chartered an airplane and went down to Mexico for a party, and 40 of them came back testing positive for COVID. I was afraid for them. And speaking of fear, gun sales permits in the last month went up 41% over a year ago. Ammunition sales has gone up 63%. People are afraid. About 20 years ago, there was another possible threat in a virus called H5N1 that rarely ever affected humans, but it was starting to affect humans, and there was real scare that there would be a pandemic then. And I preached on that and asked people to sort of think about how we need to prepare emotionally, physically, spiritually. I went to lunch with my men's group the following week, and they really wanted to talk to me about my sermon. And I asked them this question: what would you do if you did everything to prepare as you've been advised and have enough water and food to cover you through a period of 30 days of isolation and sheltering in place, and your neighbor had not prepared and they come banging on your door needing water and food? What would you do? 15 men in the room, 12 of them said, I have my gun. I was heartbroken. I understood where they were coming from, but I was heartbroken. So when we listen to what we're hearing,